Political analyst Dr. Ongama Mtimka, as well as Sandile Swana, who joins us. Ongama, I'm going to start the conversation with gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me. Really do appreciate it. And I perhaps want to start at the more germane issue, and that is that over the weekend, President Ramaphosa laid out the gauntlet against those who are seemingly and purportedly plotting against him in the ANC, right? And this rumor sort of surfaced to the public domain about a week or two ago, just before the president had hosted his boss parade of GNU partners in Krugersdorp, the west of Gauteng. We started seeing public reports that he is potentially going to be stepping down or wants to step down. We then later heard that that's not at all true or the case, that there's no plan on part of President Ramaphosa to exit early. And it seems as though a letter had been circulating amongst senior ANC leaders in certain parts of the country discussing seemingly the ousting of President Ramaphosa. Perhaps the central question to this is, Ongama, and Sandile, I want you to take on it as well. Is President Ramaphosa vulnerable within the ANC right now?
Good evening to you, Oliver, Mr. Swana, and the viewers. So this is vintage ANC politics in the last 20 years, that in the second term of a president, and 2 years into the conference, there starts to be agitations for shifting the balance of power as different groups vie to control the party so that they can, get a grip on succession processes. We saw this with President Mbeki, we saw it with President Zuma, and it was not going to happen with President Cyril Ramaphosa, especially at the time when the ANC is vulnerable both at a government level as well as at a party level. So in a nutshell, he's definitely vulnerable and he will continue to be. But how we test the vulnerability is what happens when it comes to a decision making by the NEC that may be seen to be pro or anti the president. So far, we have not seen a critical mass of a support in the NEC beginning to shift. We're hearing rumors, and I think that they are impactful. Hence, the president is going to have a frontal attack to his opponents at the level of the NEC, something which he's not known to do. I think in this, we can see this as an opening game, Oliver, in chess terms, where he is inviting what he sees as a guerrilla warfare in the sidelines to the front so that they can be able to contend with it. And I think that the reason why it's happening, he's taking this stance, is because of the momentum that may be gaining ground somewhere.
Well, I guess that would have been a move with the knight as the first and not a pawn or a rook to start it off. Suddenly, is President Ramaphosa vulnerable?
Thank you so much. No, definitely he is vulnerable. And unfortunately, we've heard some of these rumors. It started also by people saying that there could be a coup being planned, then that the president wants to resign by himself. And now the third picture is that there are people who are planning to remove him. Now, the question would be, are they saying they want to remove him as the ANC president? And also, are they planning to remove him also as the president of the Republic of South Africa? Those are important questions because some of this entire chaos started with this idea that there must be one center of power, where the ANC stopped respecting the independence or semi-independence at least, and separation between the state and the ANC. But certainly, there are people who would want him removed as the president of the ANC. And I think that would be, it's something that has got to happen. There is something that does need to happen.
Yeah. Is this a consistent, Ongama, with the practice we've seen in the ANC where President Thabo Mbeki was removed quite early. President Zuma was removed 18 months before the ANC went to election. It was a few weeks after the 2017 Nasrec elective conference of the ANC, a few days before he was meant to deliver the State of the Nation address. We saw President Ramaphosa being sworn in there, and 18 months later we had our national elections, right? And so that means that President Ramaphosa had an 18-month head start as president for a term he was not elected into, right? And many had criticized that moment as anti-democratic, that the country has a president that wasn't on the ballot of the party, and that the party now has a president that wasn't the will and the proclamation of the branches of that term, at least, right? And many had described this as anti-democratic practice. Is this a continuation of that? And importantly here, can the ANC afford it, given their electoral vulnerability nationally?
Well, I think one can think as far as President Mbeki's time. In the factional wars of the ANC, major party events become testing ground for assessing the balance of power among factions. So it may be that the opportune moment is being seen as the National General Council. But if we look at history, it hasn't been the case, to answer your question about whether it's the norm. It hasn't been the case that at the NGC, at least in the democratic period, an agitation of this nature becomes successful. Then the second issue is that where it has happened after an ANC conference, when the president has become clear, and therefore you are dealing with the two centers of power scenario. Here, the candidates are still campaigning for office. And by the way, this is why even some of us who have called for the removal of the president as analysts, I caution to say we must never underestimate the ability of having somebody who is in the state office or sits in the presidency, while those that are relevant in the succession battle or the ANC as a party is following its processes to select a leader. I think it would be very chaotic for these people who are vying for the presidency of the ANC to be contending with both the need to resolve a state power issue immediately, while at the same time they were busy trying to campaign in order to secure the party. It helps that you've got a president who may not be a factor in terms of succession politics come 2027, while the deputy president and others are positioning themselves to try and lead the party. Imagine them trying to lead the country as president with that responsibility, while at the same time needing to build a national army of people that are going to support his presidential campaign. It just doesn't work in that way. So I think the ANC needs to think long and hard about how it approaches the issue of who is state president or is party president at the moment, while the party itself is not ready to resolve the issue of who is the next president.
Yeah. Sandile, does the ANC have a vacuum of credibility when it comes to its succession practices? That is to say, is the ANC suffering from a succession crisis?
Absolutely. And bear in mind that, I mean, this is a party that had a majority from 1994 and it went up to close to 70% at some point. And in that process of going towards 70%, they started the same problem that many African countries have started. And some of us already by 1990 were very worried that South Africa would go down this path of removing presidents before their terms of office. Although in South Africa it was not military coups, it was bloodless coups of one kind or the other. Zuma went out and Mbeki went out. Now they are gunning for Cyril Ramaphosa. So we do have a process, and now there are some things that need to be mentioned. The idea of two centers of power is actually a far-fetched idea. The idea that if you become an ANC deputy president, you are automatically the next president, that is also a far-fetched idea. Those two ideas are not well-grounded. They are opportunistic in nature. So which is why now you are worried when the ANC is supposed to go to presidential elections in the ANC. We confuse that with presidential elections in the nation because there's no separation. And there is continuing problems of lawlessness in the African National Congress. They invent things that are not even in their constitution to run the ANC. So the ANC, in my mind, does not run according to its own constitution.
Very quickly, Ongama, they say he who pays the piper learns to play the tune. And that is to say that those who, to show the consolidation of power and the power of the president, very few of his detractors would be vocal. Now, I haven't heard many Ramaphosa detractors vocalize themselves, at least publicly so, in the last couple of months. Have you perhaps seen that? Are there early signs of who it is that might want to contest against him? We heard that Senzo Mchunu was one such person raising funds. He then later on said, actually, that's not the case, and that is a disputed fact. But are there data points that we can begin to look at?
Well, one of the things we've learned over the years is to not disregard the grapevine in the ANC about who's positioning themselves for what. So, as I say, the fact that the president is compelled to act in this way, to say what he said, shows that there is some simmering, or growing counter mobilization against his continued rule taking place somewhere. But ANC politicians are very calculating because of the complexity of the patronage networks and its reliance on party power bases. So you're not going to see them immediately unless they determine that their action has got viable political outcomes.
Yeah, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. Sandile, Swana, really appreciate it. Dr. Ongama Mtimka, it's always fantastic having you gentlemen on the program.